Hello, my name is John Marlin, and I'm going to speak to you today about free cloud-based tools for model railroad operations. And in particular, I'm going to be talking about some free Google tools that you can use for generating car cards, waybills. So just a quick overview of what this system will do for you is that you put in information, as you can see in the lower left-hand corner there, a little snippet of a page where this information is being put in about your cars and your waybills. And what you'll get out is what you see on the lower right-hand side, which are some nicely formatted, color-coded waybills and car cards. This will also give you some tools to help provide a variety of other useful artifacts that will be handy when you're working with a car card system in your model railroad operations. And there are, within these tools, there are also a variety of aids that the computer software is providing to help save you time and will help you get more quickly to the desired output that you want. So what are car cards and waybills? These are, it's a tool that's been used by the model railroading community for many years as a simple way to direct the movement of cars across the layout. Effectively, what happens is you have what we call a car card that matches each and every car, and that car card will move along with the car. The operator will take that card as the operator is running a train across the layout. And the cards are designed with pockets into which you'll slide a miniature version of the prototype waybill, which is indicating where that car is to be taken. If you think about it as having timetables or train lineups being a tool you use to show which trains run and where they run, the waybills are used in a similar fashion to help tell the train operator where cars should go and which ones should go there. So this is just an example of a prototype waybill, and as you can see, the waybill is showing exactly what is being shipped and from whom, who's coming from, who it's going to, and what car that is being shipped in. So in this case, we see one crate, I suppose, of some sort of chairs that are being delivered to the Axelrod Home Appliance Company, coming from Levi Furniture Corporation. In the modeler version, we don't need to have all the information that you might have in the prototypes. Here's another one from the prototype that's going to the Haley Brothers Corporation. And you'll see within there things like weight and rate and dates and waybill numbers. And I simplify some of those things out. So I'm including basically the details of the car itself. I'm including the consignee name, where it's going, and the lading information. I do generally eliminate most of the routing information related to this, except where we need to show an intermediate transfer point. That's either on the visible layout as an interchange track or somewhere in your staging area. Essentially, what we're really trying to do here is provide a logical reason for your operators on your layout to move your railroad cars from here to there, from one place to another, rather than just sort of randomly moving cars hither and thither. So I'm just going to give a little bit of background to set the stage, describing just a few details of my layout, which is a context in which I built this system up. So I have about 225 cars on the track in active service with 90 industry spots, individual spots across 40 different industries. As well as a number of spots, as you can see here, on the 4 visible interchange tracks, and then things that are down in 10 different double-ended hidden staging tracks. My railroads run using timetable and train order, although this mechanism for moving cars would work with really any means of controlling the traffic flow across the layout. I operate with a crew of about 8 to 11 folks typically. So why use computerized waybills? In my case, I'm a software developer, so I come at this from a perspective of having some familiarity with computers. Obviously, I have a layout, and I like to operate the trains in a way that is a reasonably well orchestrated fashion. And fundamentally, I am lazy, like many of us, and I'm trying to avoid specifically kind of repetitive things. And why use these Google tools? Well, they're free, and they're also readily shareable. So the things I create with these tools are the waybills themselves, the car cards. I create cards for the locomotives. I create cards for each train that is being made up and run, as well as something I'll call popsicle sticks, and that I'll describe elsewhere in here. Other things I do create with these same sets of kind of free Google tools, but that I don't cover here today, is the timetable that I use, where I'm using the capabilities to have essentially all of the times on that timetable automatically populated, and making it easy for me to sort of change schedules around and have the computer detect places where there'll be the necessity for meets, or where there might be collisions in between stations and so on. I do use that same tool then to create the full train lineup based upon what's in the timetable, and lineups for each individual yard, showing the yardmasters what's coming and going. And then I use these tools for creating all sorts of signage around the layout, charts, diagrams, instruction materials, and like other modelers, even signs that are part of the scenery and so on. But here are the basic components. You'll see here that there's a car card itself, which you can kind of tell here has that little pocket there. On these car cards, what I print is the basic information about the car, the railroad car itself, including the reporting marks, and a brief code, the XM in this case, indicating a box car. And then I do have this section printed here, the when empty return to, indicating where a car should go when it's empty, but that's actually not something I currently use in my operations. And then you can see a copy of the waybill itself, and I'll talk more about the various pieces that you see there on the waybill and the color coding that you're seeing. This is a locomotive car showing the details on the locomotive. Commonly, I'll also have other information in there around things like how to mute or what sorts of lights you can turn on and off. And then a train car itself, which gives, as you can see, critical details about a train that you're going to run. Let me just take a little step back here and talk about why would we use technology for any of this? Can I just do this with handwritten cards? The prototype through most of the era that I modeled, certainly in the late 50s, would have used manual typewriters for filling out forms, and in other eras it would have been just a handwritten document or form filled out by hand. And I started doing this. I was using the Micromart supplies and found that fundamentally those worked well. I liked the way the car card model worked. But personally, my printing skills are terrible. I've certainly seen other model railroaders whose printing looks like it came out of a typewriter, but mine does not. But the biggest thing is that things do change, especially as you're developing your traffic patterns, as you're developing your roster of cars, as you're even developing your industries and changing some of the physical things on the layout. And if it's handwritten and you need to change anything, you have to redo the card. Likewise, if cars wear out or get lost, and yes, it has occasionally happened that cars have gone home with operators and may not show up again for many months. So that's another way for them to get lost. And I did want to have pictures of cars. Again, you could do that with handwritten car cards and print out a picture and stick it on, glue it on, tape it on, whatever. But it's nice in my model to have them put right on the card itself. And then I also wanted to keep track of some of the statistics, such as how many cars I have versus what are my destination spots, where do I need more cars, what types of cars do I need more of, and so the computer certainly is useful for doing that. And then last of all, and this kind of came just a little bit later in the game, but I think it's turned out to be very valuable. I wanted this color coding to be able to have the computer figure out how to consistently apply color coding rules in terms of which trains a car is going to go on, how to know which division point it's going to be sorted at, and so on. Okay, so I'm using some technology. Why these cloud-based tools? I've come to really love the fact that these tools don't require any install. I can sit down on any device, fire this up on a Chromebook that's quick at hand, where I'm sitting in my living room or at a desktop computer or at my laptop. If I want to pull it up when I'm at a club meeting on somebody else's computer. Again, easy to kind of do these things. It's also really easy to collaborate with others while you're making changes to one of these cloud-based documents. And then it's also easy to share the final product with anybody who's interested in either seeing the details of the product on my layout, or more likely to take it and populate it with content to use for your own layout. And again, in this case, with these Google tools, they're all free and have been free for many years. They're not a fly-by-night company, obviously. Tools that I use: Google Sheets. Think of this as your spreadsheet, your Microsoft Excel, or if you're an old fogey, VisiCalc, etc. Google Docs is equivalent of your Microsoft Word, and I do use that for signage and for instructions. I do diagrams of various kinds, track diagrams, local track diagrams that are stuck up on the layout fascia, things like that. I do in Google Drawings. I do use Google Slides, which I'm using for this slide deck I put together for this presentation. There are exceptions. I have my user manuals are kind of in a tall, narrow format. I want to have really more fine-grained control over the exact look and feel and formatting of that. So I do use other products such as Microsoft Word for some other things such as that. Is this useful for anyone else? So first of all, I'm happy to share links to any of these tools, so that you can then take these, make your own copy of them in your Google account, and then modify them and use them as you wish for your own purposes. To do that, you do need to have a free Google account. If you happen to have Gmail as your primary or one of your email tools, that you already got a Google account. But if not, you can set one up with whatever email address you have, and again, it's all free. Then most of the content in my tools here is generic, or is easily customized. Fill in with the details of your layout and your cars and your locomotives and your industries, etc. In addition, the logic that's in there, if you are technically oriented and care to get in there and revise it in any way, that's possible too. So let's start with the waybills themselves, which is kind of the heart of all this, and in some ways it's the part that is the most time consuming to come up with. But maybe just a quick reminder: why are we doing this? What's the point of all this? Fundamentally, waybills are telling the crew where these cars are going. So if you look at this scene from my work in progress layout here, my main yard, where these boxes are, in my case, there's a box here representing each of the tracks in the yard, and for each of the cars that are sitting on those tracks, you'll see one of these car cards with a waybill in there. That's helping the Yardmaster organize the yard and prepare the train for the crew to take out. So just a few more specifics about the car cards and waybills that I'm generating here. These generate the 2-inch by 4-inch card, which is a very commonly used size. Fits in those micromark boxes and matches the car cards if you wanted to mix it with micromark products, or I think other companies have made that as well. It's very easy to hold on to these at that size. Fits in your hand, fits in your shirt pocket. Shirt pocket could be dangerous because, again, it maybe is a little easier for an operator to walk back to the crew lounge and forget to drop off the cards, but it does help to free up a hand. The tools that I have could be pretty relatively easily modified to create this in some other size if you wish. And in my case, I'm also generating what are called 4-cycle waybills, which is to say that each waybill will direct the car to 4 different destinations, and it does that by printing it in different orientations and on both sides of the waybill. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Also, my waybills are tied to a given car. So the first thing you're going to do for a waybill is to put in the car information for the reporting marks for the car that you're going to associate it with. And so that one waybill will always stay in that particular car card slot. It does this by tying waybills to a given car. It helps to ensure that the lading, the source, and the destinations all make sense for that car. So, for example, you're not going to take a GM&O car that's empty and head it toward the northeast, because it shouldn't be heading. My layout's set in western Pennsylvania, so it shouldn't be sending that car to the northeast. It should be sending it south. Or conversely, to take a Boston and Maine car and put a load in it that's bound for Texas, when that car should be, as an empty, should be heading back toward the Boston and Maine. It also makes it really easy to reset the layout between sessions, so that I'm not going back to a whole box of waybills and trying to get new ones for a given car. I just I wander through the layout and go to each of the bill boxes and just rotate the cards, the waybills for the ones that are ready to be rotated. Do you have to do this? Have to have waybills tied to a specific car? One of the concerns that some people have is that if you have only a single 4-cycle waybill for one car, that it might get repetitive, that you're going to see this car coming back to the same industry over and over again. In my case, and I think this is pretty typical, that depending on the routing, the same car is going to visit an industry every 5 to 9 sessions. And it's variable because depending on whether the car routes through interchanges versus routing through staging, and how long it's whether it's being held at multiple industries along the way. But so in that case, if it's going to an industry every 5 to 9 sessions, what this really works out is it's only a couple of times a year. I operate, even if I'm operating once a month, it's just not going to be that many times that it's going to show up, and the odds of the same operator getting that same job and seeing that same car and remembering it probably aren't too great. But that said, if you really wish, you could create multiple waybills per car, and the system does have a mechanism to allow for that. And if you wish, you could also be rotating waybills through different cars. So how does a waybill rotate? On the left here, you can see that the waybill's directing the car to an online industry, in this case the lose it and abuse it shipping industry, and it's coming from Nashville. And then you can see the 4 in the upper right hand corner, that 4 indicating it's the 4th of the 4 cycles. So that in between sessions, if that has arrived at its destination, at lose it and abuse it, it would then be rotated to the next one, which in this case takes you back to the first one, where you see the 1 in the upper right hand corner on the right hand side. And you can see that now it's coming from lose it and abuse it, and it's heading to a team track in Pittsburgh. I do point out this particular example here. In this case, a car that was delivered to an industry is then immediately being reloaded at that industry and sent on. That's something that, at least on my layout, doesn't happen terribly often, but it happens to, in this case, the way I decided to set it up. So what do we need to be able to create a waybill? So you have to have that car information. And again, what I put in includes the car type. I happen to use the 2-character codes, but you could use single character codes or something else if you wished. So they're standard, I think, AAR codes for the different types of railroad cars. And then you have to include the road name and number. Well, it's really the abbreviation for the road name. And then for each of the 4 cycles, you fill in the waybill details. You're going to put in the town, the actual destination town. There's a via line that in my case, the way it's set up, you're only using that if there's an intermediate interchange between my railroad and the final destination. So again, anything that goes through staging typically would show that. Things that go via the interchanges would always show that. Then you include the specific destination spot, and you show the actual lading. From an operator's perspective, some people would choose to not use ladings and say your operators don't really care what's in the car. But I like this. This gives you some sense of what you're actually dealing with as you're picking up and dropping off these cars. And then this also shows a shipper, wherever it's coming from. Or in my case, empties, I don't show that. Don't show a shipper. That's just left blank. Other things about what's in this via line, or as it shows on the waybill, the via line, I show both the railroad and the town. So, for example, the Penzie interchange in West Fillmore, so that it helps the operators to know where you're going, which is most important from their perspective, as well as to describe the railroad we're interchanging with, which again is sort of just nice to have information. Adds a little bit to the realism to imagine that you're connecting with that railroad. And then the other thing, I use these drop downs for town, the town indication, the via indication, the spot, and the lading. So ideally, with my tooling, you'd first fill in all of your online spots right up front. So you'd list those. There's a place within the spreadsheet where you list all of your online industries. That's also a place where you can keep track of how many cars or how much traffic you want that particular industry to see. And then for things that are not online, you just add them as you go. If it's an offline industry that you've previously added, you'll see that show up in the drop down. Otherwise, you can type in whatever industry name you wish. And then I do use some special text that's enclosed in parentheses within that lading column to which triggers some color coding for that particular data point. So I have information that I supply to the crew indicating when a car needs to be iced or a car needs to be weighed, if it's a priority reefer that gets some special treatment, or a passenger express. I also use that same mechanism to give information to me in between sessions, telling me about cars that I need to load, to unload, or to swap in staging. So here's let's look at an example of actually entering Waybill data. So if you look, this is the spreadsheet itself here, where you can see these different fields that I was just talking about. So you can see this car information here on the far left, where it's got the car type in that the column where if you look at the last one there, where it's XMBO, car type is XM, BO is the railroad, and the number is the actual car number there. Then here you can see there's actually 4 sets of these destination columns. This is the first one, destination 1, and you're putting in the various information associated with that particular destination. There's different color coding that's used here. So the gray color is indicating that it's a through car. It just means that it actually doesn't go to any online industry. It's passing through from staging to staging on my layout. The white color is just your normal car that's serving at least one online industry or an online interchange. Online being visible as opposed to down in staging. The pink color is indicating something that's not fully finished. You haven't filled in all the data. So in this case, the spot where you're actually supposed to deliver this in Toronto has not been indicated. The red is indicative of a duplicate car, so this particular tank car must be somewhere else within the spreadsheet where that's another car with the exact same number is there. So my setup does not allow you to have multiple cars with the same number. Now there is a mechanism if you deliberately want to create multiple waybills for a single car. And then when you see this red here within the destination section, it's indicating that it's not a valid destination. So in this case, I've indicated a spot called Carry Supply in Lindenburg, and that is not configured within the spreadsheet. There is no Carry Supply in Lindenburg, so that's an error. Maybe I chose a spot that's in some other location. All right, so. How do you actually set up these waybills and in a way that the pattern of car movement actually makes sense for a given car? If you even care about it, I do. So it is something that I think about, and the tool itself doesn't actually do anything to help you with that. You just need to think about it as you lay these out. So if I bring a load to an industry, then the next cycle is normally going to be an empty movement going in the right direction for that car. So it's starting to move that car back in some logical path that's going to get it back to its home railroad. And then, just simple examples, don't load a hopper at a mine and then send that hopper car to another mine because it's already loaded. send it to a place that actually can use that load. Again, in my waybills, I do have this mechanism to help to indicate to me as the manager in between sessions to add and remove visible loads. You could also, if you have your operators do some of that loading and unloading, you could use this to have them look for that color coding and do that as well. But in my case, I always do that between sessions. You also need to know how your staging works. So if you have stub-ended staging, where a train that goes into Buffalo, that train's later gonna come back out, and it's gonna be still coming from Buffalo because you've moved the engine to the other side, and you're just returning that same train exactly as it was. If you have a return loop within your staging, so it's coming back looking like it's still coming from the same direction. In my case, I have double-ended staging where the train will go into my easternmost end of the railroad, and when it shows up in the next section, it'll actually be coming from the west. And so again, you just need to put the information into the waybills such that on that next cycle, it actually represents a movement from that direction. I mentioned just briefly these auto-completes. So the system already knows about all your online spots and anything you've ever previously entered. So in this case, I'm looking at the spot column. You can see these drop downs here. Somebody has typed in, I've typed in FE, and it's showing all of the things that match with FE as part of the name of the spot. So again, same thing works for the VIA line, for the lading line, for the town line. It doesn't, though, have any smarts around knowing which spots are in which towns or which ladings would make sense for which car types, anything like that. You still have to use your own brain to know those things. I mentioned that I do like to use this tool for tracking usage of spots. So here you can see just a snippet of some of the spots that are on my layout, ordered in this case by town on the far left, and then the industry itself, and then the spot in the third column. And I've indicated the capacity, how many cars can go there, and then how many waybills I think is the right number of waybills to have for that industry and for the actual siding capacity. And you can see there's some color coding here where green indicates I wanted 4 waybills. I've got 4 waybills. I'm essentially done with that one. It's filled up. White lines indicate that there are still ideally could have some more cars heading to that destination, and red indicating that I currently have more cars than I've indicated as my ideal. So now you've got some information in there. You're ready to print the waybills, and the way they print out, you can see I print them sort of 4 up on a printer, and it's two-sided, so there'll be 12 waybills coming out on a piece of paper. You put the paper through twice to print it two-sided, or you can, if your printer is a two-sided printer, and if your printer very accurately keeps the two sides lined up, you can, either way, it's going to end up printed two-sided on the page. When you're ready to print waybills, the mechanism for printing it actually automatically will know which waybills you have fully filled out and therefore are ready to print but have not yet printed. So it keeps track of which ones have been printed. And it also checks for certain types of errors and will not show them if those errors occur. And again, indicates those errors with that color coding I described earlier. After you've printed both sides, then you just click a button and it's going to move whichever ones you've printed and you can print 12 at a time. Although if sometimes if you just added five more cars, you don't have to print all 12. And then if you ever need to reprint one of these because you've made some changes to it, you just delete that car from the printed list, and it will then automatically show up again as to be printed. So that's it. That's your waybills, and again, that's really the hardest part of this, and the place where probably the spreadsheet and this overall logic behind the spreadsheet provides the most added value. So moving on to the car cards. So the good news is there's no more data entry to do at all. All the car information that is necessary is already going to be imported from what you put into the Waybill spreadsheet. Now, these cards are designed to have photos with them, and so to use the system as it stands today, you have to take a photo of your card and you upload that photo to a specific Google directory. So typically what I'm doing is getting a nice low angle view of the car, and then I just quickly edit it, and I just use the free Windows photo editing software to crop it to the size of the car, and maybe to get rid of any tilt that's in the image. And again, then you upload it into this Google directory, which the spreadsheet can then pick those pictures up from and load those pictures in to use in creating the car cards. And the way it's set up right now, you can only print a card. It only shows up as a car card ready to be printed once that picture has been found. So a combination of seeing the waybill in your, or seeing the car information in your waybill file and seeing the picture is what tells it it's ready to print. After you print the car card out, it has a line on there showing how you fold it up, and you just quickly put a couple pieces of Scotch tape on the side, and that creates your pocket for the car card. You can easily change the format of the card if you want to, if you wanted to eliminate the pictures, or if you want to have things like a return when empty, or not have return when empty, or have other instructions, generic instructions related to the car. I typically print these car cards on a heavier paper stock to give you a little more stiffness and durability. So here's how they print. You can see it's that lower section where it says fold up is the portion that will be folded up. You get 5 cars for each page. After you've printed, there's a button you click, and it will take the ones that you've just printed and move them into another list of those that have already been printed. And generally that's all you need to do. If you ever have a reason you need to reprint one because again it gets torn or lost or damaged, or if you repainted it and wanted to print it with a new photo or something, you just delete it from the tab that has the printed list, and remove that one entry, and it will then automatically reappear as ready to print again. Okay, so what else can we do to make the use of these car cards easier for the operators on your layout? And one of the operators that I think the most about in this role is the Yardmaster. On my layout, as on many layouts, the yard is one of the most challenging portions of the layout to run, and it's also an area that can become the biggest bottleneck for overall layout operations if things are not able to be run quickly and efficiently within the yard. So I'm thinking a lot about how to help the Yardmaster. This color coding can be used by all the operators, but again, the Yardmaster in particular has the challenge of kind of quickly trying to figure out, I've got a train of cars that came in, where do these cars go? How do I classify them in the right way so that I'll be able to efficiently move things through the yard? And what we have here with these colors is information that will tell you how things route within that layout of yours, including concept of a major division yard where the car will go to be classified, and then information about the train that's going to be responsible to deliver it from that division yard to a final delivery location, as well as obviously the specific town where the car is going to be spotted. So you can see these 3 different colors across the top of the car. Keep in mind that you're only going to see the top of the car showing, so the bottom half, the upside down half, won't even show when it's stuck into the car card. So in that top half, you see 3 different colors. The orange on the upper right is telling you that it goes to a particular division yard. The purple then tells you which train from that division yard it should be sent out on, and the green tells it which town it's going to. There are also colors that can highlight within the lading section to indicate any special handling instructions that might be needed for the yard crew. And I mentioned things like icing and weighing. I actually also have cars that need to be sent over to the stockyard to water animals then in transit. Things like that you can include logic that will color code those to make it easier for the busy yard operator to spot those and recognize that they need that special handling. And again, as I mentioned, you only see the top half, and this is kind of the way those color codes are lined up. You specify the rules for the colors only once. You have colors that are specific to town. You have colors that indicate different staging areas or interchange areas that trains might be going to, and the major yards that you have within your layout. There is not currently within here support for different trains serving the same town based upon different car types. So if you had a town that gets serviced by a coal train and then also is serviced by a separate peddler, this doesn't have the right logic to break that out. If anybody has that case and is particularly interested in it, we could talk about what might need to change in order to support that. Another tool that I use these spreadsheets to print out is what I call popsicle sticks. So these are taller cards, again printed on stiff paper, and you'll have them in your yard areas, in those boxes for the yard areas, to help separate trains. And oftentimes, the way my yard is run, I don't designate track 1 always is used for a particular train. There aren't enough yard tracks for every train that you're going to be building, so you need to be flexible based upon what trains are coming up in the schedule, or that you have a bunch of cars that you need to run a train for. And there even are times where a given track might have more than 2 cars for more than one train, and you can use these taller cards to stand up above the regular car cards to separate those different groups. And again, we use the same color scheme here, so that from a Yardmaster's perspective, if I've got a track that's already designated here for this uptown peddler with the red and orange that you see, the leftmost one here, then any cars that come in on the next train that have that red-orange combination, I know to just drop into that same spot there on that same section of the track. And I do include on here some of the key details for the yard crew. This isn't all of the train information, but just that key information for the yard crew around how many cars to expect and direction which it departs, and occasionally there may be some other special rules relevant to the Yardmaster. These, by the way, there's no special logic here. These are just cells in a spreadsheet essentially, but they're all sized so that they exactly print in the correct size to match with the other waybills and car cards and the bill boxes that I'm using, and to obviously reuse the same colors Here you can see those popsicle sticks in action where if you look, the ones in the back, these tall cards are the popsicle sticks that indicate what cars are in that track, with then the cars associated with that popsicle stick in front of those taller ones. And there can be more than one of these in a given track. It looks like the one on track 1 there are 2 different popsicle sticks in there. Notice that the colors then just match up with the colors on the waybills, so that you again can quickly see that you're putting it in the right place. For cars that are being classified in a different yard, so we're looking at the East Fillmore yard, which is the orange and upper right. So for all those orange in the upper right cars, the yard crew is breaking them out by train. For things that go to other yards for further classification, you only need to look at the upper right corner. So in this case, the red in the upper right corner actually represents an offline staging, in my case, representing things heading toward Buffalo and beyond. And so anything with red in the upper right-hand corner is going to be placed into that pillbox. So essentially the rules are you look first at the color in the upper right to determine the subdivision that particular car should be directed to. And if it's not the current subdivision or that yard is serving, then you're going to put it on a transfer train to take it to the correct subdivision. My better yardmasters or yardmasters that are operating with a little more time on their hands will then further block using the color in the upper left corner, which will be the train that they're going out on from that division. So it will help the next yardmaster that receives those cars. If the color in the upper right matches your current subdivision, then I look to the color in the upper left to classify those cars. So, and all of this may sound a bit confusing as I describe it, but I guess I'd say just trust me that when it's actually in practice, what I've heard from yard crews running my yard, that it's easy to learn, and again, it doesn't require any knowledge of the overall layout, where different towns might be, where an off layout town might be serviced, what interchange I would need to send it to for that. So things can go very quickly. So I guess I already talked through a little bit of this in the last slide. Again, you can see those first 3 tracks all are orange in the upper right, which is the local trains, and then green, blue, red are going to go on transfer trains heading off to those other areas. And this picture I took at the end of my October 2018 session, I believe, and as you can see, the yard is looking in pretty good shape. What about colorblind crew members? Well, the truth is all the real data that you need is still there in the text. The colors are optional in a sense to help you. But without those colors, you do need to know where things are and what trains service which towns. New operators who can't distinguish colors would have difficulty on my layout. And again, this problem would particularly impact yard masters who have the more challenging role of breaking those trains apart. If you're running an individual train, the colors become much less important. I could add geometric shapes or other graphics of some kind to help for those folks, but I haven't done anything like that yet. So those are cars, car cards, waybills, classifying of cars. Let's make up some trains. So to get a train, I actually need an engine. And so I have locomotive cars that work exactly like the car cards I described earlier. They don't have the fold-up portion because they don't need a pocket. And they do have some other data points that you can fill in around the type of engine, whether they have sound or not, and then any sort of notes that you want to put in specific to functions that you can activate on that engine, etc. Again, they're the same size as the car cards, and they will easily stack with those car cards. And you're just entering that data in a spreadsheet. And train cards are, again, very similar. These train cards are just simple cells in a spreadsheet. So again, spreadsheet isn't doing anything for you other than just to help ensure that everything prints out and lines up same size as all the other things. And on these, I include just basic information about the train, where it starts and ends, what class it runs as, how many cars it can carry. And then all of these things get clipped together, the locomotive car cards and the train card. I normally would have the train card reversed on the back so that you can easily see all of those, see both the locomotive and the train card. So here they are in use. You typically would order them based upon the order in a train or the way they're lined up on a yard track. And I have little sorting boards that you can lay these car cards out on if you're a yard crew or if you're switching in an industrial area or a local town. Then you can lay them out on these sorting boards. Alternatively, conductors can make up switch lists and then plan your moves based upon the switch lists. And as you're going around, you're actually carrying them together, as I mentioned, in this sort of packet. I have these little binder clips to hold them together. As you can see, you can flip it over. You see on the one side the locomotive information for entering that into your GCC system, and on the other side, you see all the details about the train. And that's it. We are ready to run some trains. So thank you all for listening. I hope this is helpful, and I will also be sharing some links to where you can access some more information about this or reach out to me for more details. This is by no means a commercial tool, and so if you're interested in using this, reach out to me and we can talk about getting you set up.